Yeah, we back. Now, today's going to be a quick video. Going to be responding to a headline that I seen in the news as of recently. Take a look up on the screen. France acknowledges the devastating effect of the debt imposed on Haiti for freedom. After 2 centuries, a contrite tone from President Emmanuel Macron, though no talk of reparations for French actions that thwarted the development of the former colony. Now, I've already discussed this topic at length. I'm not going to discuss it again. I've talked about it in multiple videos, but I'll put a link in the description box for a video I dropped 6 months ago entitled "The Truth Behind the Independence Debt." That's a 40-minute video. I go in depth about the truth behind the independence debt. Haiti was not forced to pay reparations. That was a backdoor deal between family members. Okay, I already discussed that. That was the deal signed between the French colonist and his mixed race son, his mixed race nephew, his mixed race grandson. That was a deal among family members. That was family business, and the Haitian people suffered as a result. Now, when you get finished watching this video, go in the description box and watch that video. 40 minutes long. I go in depth. Haitians were not forced to pay reparations. That was a backdoor deal between family members, and I'll discuss a little bit of that later. But anyways, let's jump into the article. President Emmanuel Macron of France said on Thursday that it was time to recognize the truth of history. 200 years after King Charles recognized the independence of Haiti, but demanded the former colonists be paid an enormous sum for their freedom. As a result, Haiti became the only country in the world where the descendants of enslaved people were forced over generations to compensate the descendants of their former colonial masters. This decision placed a price on the freedom of a young nation, which was thus confronted from the moment of its constitution with the unjust force of history. Now, that's what President Macron said the other day. Now, back to what I said about the fact that Haitians were not forced to pay reparations. That was actually a backdoor deal amongst family members. Now, why do I say that? The French had made 3 attempts between 1814 and 1816 to open communication with the heads of state on the island at that time. Now, we got to start back during the beginning. When Dessalines was the head of state from 1804 to 1806, the French made no attempt at opening communication between the French government and Dessalines' government. Dessalines died in 1806. He was assassinated in 1806. After his death, the nation was split into 2 governments, into 2 regimes, with Christophe taking the north, the Kingdom of Haiti. And when it came to the south, that was controlled by the Southern generals, the mixed race generals, the sons of the French colonists. And they called it the Republic of Haiti. So from about 1807 to 1820, the nation was split between these 2 factions. Now, in the north, you had an elite class of black men and women. And in the south, you had an elite class mainly composed of men of mixed race. Now, keep in mind, the so-called deal for reparations was signed in 1825, but the French had first began opening communication for reparations back in 1814. Now, during this time, the nation was divided, so the French government had sent a different set of ambassadors to each section of the island, right? They sent an ambassador to the south, and they sent a different ambassador to the north to negotiate separately with the 2 heads of state. Now, when the French ambassador went to the south, when he met with the generals of mixed race, they had dinner, they had drinks, they sat down, they spoke as gentlemen. Nobody was arrested. Nobody was killed. It was actually very cordial and very friendly. And the leader of the South at that time, General Alexander Pétion, he was actually open to the idea of paying reparations to the French, right, in exchange for acknowledgement of their independence. Now, unfortunately, when the French ambassador landed in the north in Christophe's territory, he wasn't met with a nice dinner and some drinks and some friendly, cordial conversation. He was arrested and he was killed. He was executed. Not only did Christophe have the French ambassador executed, but through means of intelligence, Christophe actually discovered that the Southern generals were actually in active negotiation with the French to pay reparations. So Christophe actually published in the national newspaper called the Royal Gazette of Haiti. Christophe exposed them in the national newspaper. He said they're traitors, they're talking to the enemy, they're negotiating with the enemy, and they should be killed. And it was only after they got exposed in Christophe's national newspaper, that's when they cut off all negotiations with the French, because Christophe had made it public and he had embarrassed them in front of the entire nation. So now they had to put on a fake, nationalistic front as if they wasn't talking to the French. So In 1814, the French had reached out to both heads of state, but negotiations failed. They couldn't come to an agreement with either one, right? They went to Christophe. Christophe killed him and exposed what they were doing in the South. So the Southern generals had no choice but to cut off all communication with the French in order to save their image and save their credibility, right? Because they got exposed for communicating with the enemy. Now, fast forward to 1820. That's the year that Christophe had a stroke. Christophe passed away. He committed suicide. He died. Now, keep in mind, the deal with the French was signed in 1825. Now, Christophe died in 1820. Who came to power after Christophe's death? General Jean-Pierre Boyer, a man of mixed race who was educated in France, trained in France, and had connections in France. And in fact, I believe he died in France. And it was under his administration that the French were finally able to come to terms with an agreement for reparations. Now, like I said, nobody was forced to sign anything. This was a deal that he willingly signed with his own hand. Nobody forced him to do it. He gladly did it. Like I said, this was a man whose formative years were spent in France. He was educated in France. He came up in the French military academies. His father was a white Frenchman. So do you really think that this individual needed to be forced to do anything for France? He was already a Frenchman from birth. Keep in mind, General Jean-Pierre Boyer never spent a day enslaved on a sugar plantation. He was in France enjoying life, chasing white women, right? That's what he was doing over in France. He was in France going to school, chasing little white girls in France, doing his thing over in Paris. He never spent a single day on the sugar plantation. He doesn't know anything about slavery, right? So his mentality is not going to be the same as other mentalities such as, Dessalines and Christophe and other men who actually seen firsthand the brutality of the institution of chattel slavery. Now, the reason why I say the Haitians were not forced to pay is because Dessalines would not have paid, right? That's why Dessalines built all the multiple fortresses and citadels all across the nation, right? Christophe didn't pay. They asked Christophe to pay. Christophe killed him and said, I ain't paying a dime. They came back in 1816 and sent Christophe a letter. And guess what? Christophe never opened the letter. Christophe died without paying a dime. Dessalines died without paying a dime. So I don't give any excuses to General Jean-Pierre Boyer as to, he was forced to pay. He was not forced to pay. He willingly paid. He gladly paid. He didn't fire a single shot against the French. And in fact, I've already read letters on my channel that Christophe actually wrote where Christophe had said that it would actually be more honorable to be exterminated off the face of the earth than ever pay a single dime to the French. Christophe actually said that in one of his declarations, right? So Jean-Pierre Boyer, he had all the means, all the resources to defend himself against any French aggression, but he had no intention to fight, right? And now let me explain to you why I give him no excuses. Because after Christophe died, Jean-Pierre Boyer took over the Northern Territory. He took over Christophe's territory. And when he took over Christophe's territory, that means that Christophe's military was integrated into his military. Christophe's treasury that was overflowing with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of gold, billions of dollars worth of gold that was integrated into his treasury. And last but not least, most importantly, the Citadel, the largest military fortress in all of the Western Hemisphere. The most formidable military fortress of that time came under his possession when he integrated Christophe's territory under his administration. So he had Christophe's military, the treasury, and the Citadel in his possession. And on top of that, don't forget, he took over the Spanish side of the island too. So that means Jean-Pierre Boyer, he had control over all the ports of the island. He had control over all the territory on the island, including the Spanish side. And don't forget all the gunpowder, the weapons, and the ammunition in the Citadel. So that means that from the north to the south to the Spanish side, he had everything he needed to defend the country militarily if the French ever decided to come back. And what happened when the French approached him in 1825? He did not fire a single shot. He folded. He signed the deal. He signed the deal. And ever since then, y'all been going around lying to the entire world talking about we were forced to pay. We were not forced to pay. That man willingly paid his fathers and his cousins and his uncles and his grandfathers the money because that was a half-white black man that grew up in France and he never spent a day in slavery. So he had no qualms about signing the country away to his white family members. And Haitians have been going around for the last 200 years, allowing him to escape accountability, saying that he was forced to do it. He was not forced to do it. That man willingly did it. He gladly did it. He would have did it back in 1814 if Christophe didn't expose them. So over here on this channel, we do not allow Jean-Pierre Boyer to escape accountability for what he did, his crimes against the country. You were not forced to do anything. You gladly paid the money. You had everything you needed to defend yourself, and you did not fire a single shot. You didn't even throw a single rock at the Frenchman. Jean-Pierre Boyer, I piss on your grave. I don't got no respect for you, bro. Now let's continue. Now, anyways, back to this, this reparations, right? First things first, we got to understand the French government is never going to pay reparations to the Haitian government. First things first, the French government is not even in the economic position to even be shelling out that type of money, especially with how many geopolitical setbacks they've been taking in recent years, especially in regions like Africa. You had, French multinational corporations damn near going bankrupt. They had to get bailouts from the French government. They getting kicked out of this country and that country. They don't even have access to the uranium in Africa anymore. They got to go to Kazakhstan and Malaysia and all type of random countries, and they got to pay market price. They can't even get it for the low price they used to get it back in Africa. And I believe when it comes to the French economy, French debt is actually higher than their GDP. So currently right now, France is dealing with all type of economic deficits. They're in no position to be shelling out all type of money like that to anybody. They're in no position at all. So all of this is symbolism. This is just empty symbolism for whatever reason. So when it comes to me, I'm not going to beg somebody for some money that they don't even have. And I know they're not going to give it to me. And even if they could give it to me, they don't even have it to give, right? They going broke. But when it comes to me, if I could ask something of the French government, if I could make a request to the French government that actually has symbolic value, I would ask them, what happened to Christophe's firstborn son that died in France at 11 years old back in 1805, right? What happened to Christophe's firstborn son that died under mysterious circumstances and nobody knows where he's buried? Nobody knows where his body is. How come no Haitian politician, Haitian historian, or anybody has ever made the request to the French government as to what happened to Christophe's firstborn son that died in France at the hands of the French government? Where's his body? Where is he buried? How did he die? What's the cause of death? How come nobody ever asked these questions after damn near 220 years? Now, some of y'all may be asking, how did Christophe's firstborn son get kidnapped and killed by the French government? We got to start from the beginning. Take a look up on the screen. Francois Ferdinand Henry Christophe was the eldest son and the first child of Field General Henry Christophe, the future king of Haiti, and his wife, Marie-Louise Quadavid. Now, as you can see, he was born in 1794 and he died in 1805. So he died around 10 years old, 11 years old, under very mysterious circumstances that have never been made clear after 220 years. Now, how did he end up in the hands of the French? Let's start back from the beginning, right? Now, at the start of the revolution, a lot of black men went over to the Spanish side and initially sided with Spain. Why? Because the Spanish were arming certain rebel factions in the French side of the island to destabilize the French, because the Spanish wanted to take over the French side of the island, because the French side of the island had the most lucrative sugar plantations in all of the Western Hemisphere. In all of the colonies, the French side of the island had the most lucrative plantations. Now, around the same exact time, the British actually launched an invasion at the same time. So the Spanish and the British launched invasions into the colony to take over the colony at the same exact time. So the French, at this time, they were under attack from all sides. The enslaved blacks were in revolt. They were in open rebellion. And you had the Spanish and the British who were making incursions into the colony. So the French, under immense pressure, under unimaginable pressure, in 1794, they made the bold step to abolish slavery, not only in the French colony of Saint-Domingue, not only in Haiti, but in all French territories. In all French colonies, slavery was abolished in 1794. Not because the French had finally found Jesus, but because the French were under so much pressure. So the French offered not only emancipation and citizenship, but also military integration to any rebels who would join the French military to defend the colony against the Spanish and the British. And due to the fact that the Spanish and the British were invading the colony in order to expand their slaveholding operations, a lot of black men integrated themselves into the French military to defend their newfound emancipation. And it was around this time that Toussaint Louverture was actually promoted to the rank of general in the French army, right? Dessalines was also a brigadier general. Christophe was a colonel and later became a general in the French army. And from 1794 to about 1801, the colony was essentially an autonomous territory that was governed by Toussaint Louverture and his generals and lieutenants, right? It was black men who were the governors, the administrators, the tax collectors. It was black men who controlled the import exports. It was black men in control of the ports. Really, at this point, it was only a French colony on paper, but really and truly, it was an autonomous territory under black rulership. It was Toussaint Louverture controlling the day-to-day operations of the colony. France at this time no longer had any direct control. In fact, just so you kind of get an idea of what I mean, around this time, foreign governments like the American government, the British government, they were no longer going to France anymore. When they wanted to communicate, they went directly to Toussaint Louverture. They went directly to Christophe. They went directly to Dessalines. They didn't even go to France anymore. That shows you the growing influence of the black generals during this time. Now, it was around this time that Christophe made the crucial mistake. Christophe made the fatal mistake of sending his son to France. Now, why did Christophe send his son to France? Around this time, Christophe was a brigadier general in the French military, right? He was a French military officer. He was a big landowner. He was a very prosperous and powerful black man. And I believe it was in the year 1801 or 1800 when Christophe actually sent his firstborn son to France to enroll in the French military academies. Now, Christophe, unable to predict the future, he would realize later that this would be a drastic mistake. Now, in 1801, Toussaint Louverture would actually make the fatal mistake that would cost him his own life when he actually wrote his own constitution and declared himself governor for life. Now, Napoleon Bonaparte, the King of France, he viewed that as an act of war. He viewed that as disrespect to his authority. It was already bad enough that we allowed you guys to operate autonomously, but now you are asserting your sovereignty and writing your own constitution, declaring yourself governor for life, and saying that you can nominate your own successor. When it came to Napoleon, that was the last straw. That was the last straw, and that is what prompted Napoleon Bonaparte to send that invasion in 1802. The largest military expedition in the history of military campaigns at that time in 1802, because Toussaint Louverture had the audacity to write his own constitution, and for that, he paid for that mistake with his life. Because, as you already know, he was arrested, he was thrown in jail, and he died in jail. Now, in 1802, the French had sent the warships to invade the colony with the strict instructions: number 1, arrest Toussaint Louverture; number 2, kill or arrest all the black generals; number 3, kill every black person, man, woman, and child above the age of 6. And then from then, they would import fresh Africans from the continent to restart the slave trade. Now, at this point, after Toussaint got arrested and he died in jail, that's when guys like Christophe and Dessalines had flipped and switched sides, and now we're actually waging war against the French, and it became a full-blown war of independence at this point. But here's the problem. During this time, the French still had possession of Christophe's child. Christophe's child, his firstborn son, was still in France during the war. So they used that as a bargaining chip. Now, of course, Christophe, being the formidable black man that he was, he did not capitulate under the pressure. He did not fold under the pressure. He told the French, listen, I'm a young man. My wife is young. My wife is beautiful. I'll have another son. And that's what Christophe did. You know, Christophe had another son. And unfortunately, Christophe's firstborn son, he died under mysterious circumstances in France. Take a look up on the screen. As a young boy, Francois Ferdinand was sent by his father to Paris, France, in order to receive a military education. Instead, the Parisians, freshly defeated by the Haitian armies led by his father, took Francois Ferdinand out of school and made him a hostage and placed him in an orphan's asylum in Paris. On October 7th, 1805, the 11-year-old boy died at the Orphans Hospital of Paris. Both the circumstances of his death and his burial place are unknown. Now, unfortunately, 220 years later, we still do not know what happened to the whereabouts of Francois Ferdinand Christophe. We don't know what happened to Christophe's firstborn son. He died in France at 11 years old, 10 years old, and nobody knows what happened to his dead body. Nobody knows what they did with it. Over 220 years later, nobody has even made a request to even ask the French government what happened. I don't know what's going on. So y'all talking about reparations that were willingly signed away, when really we should be asking what happened to Christophe's firstborn son, right? Now, of course, Christophe had many other children. For example, take a look up on the screen on the right. I actually ran a portrait through AI, right? Like an old portrait of Christophe's son and his 2 daughters. I ran it through AI, and it basically gave me an image of what they would look like in real life, right? So to the right, we have Christophe's second-born son, Victor, and his 2 daughters, Amethyst and Athenaïre. But unfortunately, over 200 years later, nobody knows what happened to Christophe's firstborn son, who died at the hands of the French government in Paris. How the hell one of the founding fathers of the nation, his firstborn son, gets killed by a foreign government and nobody ever asks what happened? Now, to me, when it comes to the French, finally acknowledging the so-called, reparations debt, that's cool, but whatever. But That's all symbolism to me. But if you want to talk about symbolism, this is some symbolism that I would appreciate. I would like some information on what happened to Christophe's firstborn son, Francois Ferdinand. How did he die? How did y'all kill him? Where did y'all bury him? What y'all do with the body? I believe that in honor of his memory, in honor of the forefathers, we need to find out what happened to the firstborn son of one of the greatest leaders of the nation. He was killed by a foreign government, and we need answers. We need concrete answers. That's something the French government could provide. They're never going to pay the money because they don't got the money, but they could provide answers on what they did to an innocent 11-year-old black child. Why did they kill him? Where did they kill him? And where did they dispose of the body? That's something we need to start asking the French government. When it comes to the reparations, you're never going to get that. It was signed away willingly, right? The white Frenchman and his mixed race son, they had a backdoor deal and they came to an agreement behind our backs, right? It is what it is. We never gonna get the money back, but we can get answers on what happened to Christophe's son. That boy has been missing for over 220 years and nobody knows what happened to him. He just fell off the face of the earth. And to me, that's not cool. And I want answers. And that bothers me for real. That bothers me for real. Now, anyways, man, I'm not gonna be here too long, man. It's your boy Neferkari. That's Celine back in the Billy S&D. Cash App in the description. Support the channel. Album out now. So Hell 1816. Support the album. Go to my homepage in my playlist section. Enjoy the album, and I'm gone. Peace.
Told me she loved me and said that it's real. So independent, ain't signing no deal. Feel like a king and I'm up in Cap Henry. I'm in the citadel, top of the hill. Trying to run up and we let off a cannon. Secret location, I'm keeping it sealed. You ain't retaliate, Franco Medina. Came to the country and he got killed. You ain't retaliate, Rafi and Mans. Thought you was law, thought you was real. Didn't even want to come pick up the body. Had your man locked up, he died in the cell. Up at the palace, I'm throwing a party. Right on the south and I'm giving them hell. And my little shorty, she looking exotic. African features, she casting a spell. Run to the check like I work on my fitness. Wake up each morning and handle my business. Said that she love me, she want my genetics. Wanna get married and make it official. Wanna get married and have my babies. Up in the city, I'm riding Mercedes. Up in the city, they treat me like royalty. Feeling like Dolph, talking about lords. Spreading my wings and I had to get fly. Up in the top, an incredible vibe. Came from the bottom, I'm up in the sky. Gave one look and said, baby, you fine. Wake up each morning and handle my business. They just be talking, you see me, I live it. Ride on my enemies, sounding like thunder. 1804, got that shit in my spirit. 1804 when I step in the building. 1804, and that's word of my mother. Rock my women and die for my brother. Never gonna fall when I'm deep under pressure. Tell them we back and they better accept it. Move like a king, every step is divine. Ride on my enemies with no exception. Taking revenge and I'm taking what's mine. Pour up a drink and it's time that we toast. Watching my back, keep my enemies close. Only the family, I stick with my brothers. Cannons position outside of the coast. Heavy artillery for the protection. Move like a general, stick to the code. Feel like a king when I'm up in the north. Beautiful women, they trying to get chose. Launch an invasion all over the south. Capture the capital with all my woes. Look at my energy and my demeanor. Dripping that ice and that's head to my toes. Lately I'm flexing all on the Americans. Flexing my muscle on missing my road. Just got a carriage just coming from London. Boy, that shit cash, I ain't taking no loans. Boy, that shit cash, that's fresh on the boat. Enemy know I got millions in gold. Enemy know I got choppers and cannons. How did I do it? They can't understand it. How did I do it? It's cause I'm relentless. Call me King Harry, my name is cemented. Call me King Harry, I'm up in the palace. Call me King Harry, I'm raising the status.